In this video, I'm going to be discussing my recommendations for a basic load of ammunition each person should carry on them during operations. I have here examples of the three most common calibers you will see in militias. First off, we have the M16 AR-15 family, chambered in 5.56 millimeter or 223 Remington. My recommendation, if you do have the choice, get a rifle chambered in 5.56 millimeter, because if the rifle is chambered for 5.56, it will also be able to fire 223 Remington. But a rifle chambered for 223 Remington will not necessarily be able to fire 5.56 millimeter. Now, the basic load of ammunition for the U.S. military is 7 30-round magazines. And that is my recommendation also. As a minimum, you should have 7 30-round magazines of 5.56 or 223 per person. Now, one thing to consider, I've seen a lot of footage out of Iraq from fighting in Fallujah and Mosul, where soldiers and Marines, some of them were carrying around 20 magazines apiece, and you could see that by counting the magazines on their body armor. A lot of the other troops were carrying 14 magazines each. So they're carrying double the 7 magazine minimum. We should be considering the same. Now, how much will that weigh? Because weight does figure in a lot of it. Each magazine weighs approximately 1 pound each, so 7 magazines would be 7 pounds. You would have 210 rounds of ammunition at your disposal. Now we have the AK series chambered in 7.62 by 39. That's easier to come across than the newer 5.45 by 39, which is what's used in the AK-74 series. I recommend, like with the ARs, you should have at least 7 30-round magazines for a total of 210 rounds. Weight: each AK magazine weighs approximately 1.5 pounds. 7 magazines comes out to 10.5 pounds in weight. Now, if you have a squad automatic rifleman or an equivalent, you may not have a person who has the correct permits to be able to get an automatic weapon. But if you have a person who's carrying a Chinese NHM91, which is a RPK clone, they should have either the 40-round magazines that were designed for the RPK or the 75-round drums. The 75-round drums weigh approximately 5 pounds each. I recommend each gunner carries at least 3 drums for a total of 225 rounds. Now, our next common caliber that you see is with the G3 and HK clones, chambered in either 7.62 by 51 NATO or 308 Winchester. Try to get weapons chambered in 308 Winchester, because those weapons will be able to fire 7.62 NATO, but a rifle chambered in 7.62 NATO will not necessarily be able to fire 308 Winchester ammunition. I recommend you carry 9 magazines. Now, some historical information. I found that the U.S. military in Vietnam, when they carried the M14, Each troop carried as their basic load 5 magazines, or 20 round magazines, for a total of 100 rounds. The German Bundeswehr, when they were carrying the G3 as their primary rifle, also carried 5 magazines for a total of 100 rounds. 9 magazines, 20 rounds each, would give you 180 rounds. But how much will that weigh? Each magazine weighs approximately 1 1/3 pounds each. 9 magazines comes in at just under 12 pounds. Now, for pistols, there are 2 most common calibers for pistols in the militia movement: 45 ACP and 9mm. Each magazine for the 1911, a 7-round magazine, weighs around 8.6 ounces. I recommend you carry at least 3 magazines, 21 rounds. Comes out to 1.5 pounds. Now for 9mm, they're typically 15-round magazines, which weigh around 9.5 ounces each. Recommend 3 magazines for a total of 45 rounds, and that comes out to a weight around 1 pound 12 ounces. Now, there is an old saying, ounces equal pounds, pounds equal pain. So you need to take weight into consideration. These are minimums that you should have. If you can carry more, you should. You carry what you are physically able to. The extra weight that you carry will wear you out quicker. So that's something you do got to consider. But you also have to think about having that ammunition available to you during a firefight. There are plenty of videos online of militias recommending their troops carry only 3 magazines each for a total of 90 rounds. They're using information from police firefights with criminals to come up with that 3 magazine maximum, is really what a lot of them, when you watch the videos, they say that you need no more than 3 magazines. We should not be looking only at law enforcement information. We should also be looking at information from military firefights. How much ammunition is expended in a firefight? How is the ammunition expended? Is it full auto? Is it semi? Is it spray and pray? Is it aimed shots? I think we should look primarily at the Vietnam era for our information, because capability wise, that will be about what we're at for weapon systems and for tactics. Hopefully I'm getting you thinking and evaluating your capabilities. Now, I will mention that these should not be the only magazines you have. If you carry 7 magazines, you really should have at least 14, because every 30 days, if you keep your magazines loaded, every 30 days or once a month, you should rotate those magazines. So you unload the loaded magazines and put the ammunition in the unloaded ones. And then the ones that were just unloaded, they get put in a bag, put on the shelf, put on the hook for the next month. The reasoning behind that is research done by militias up in Michigan. They have found that the springs on civilian magazines are not as strong as military ones. And they recommend you keep them loaded for a max of 30 days. That way you extend the life of the magazine. If you keep them loaded for 6 months or 12 months, well, you're probably going to end up having to change those springs inside the magazine after not too long. Now, for all my engineer brothers and the Patriot and militia movement, always remember, essayons.